Welcome to Mr. Evil, the most terrifying corner on YouTube, where secrets and unsolved cases hide in the dark. Here we dive into the world of puzzles and brutal murders and bloody crimes, where we reveal the most horrifying cases and the latest investigations without leaving any terrifying details undiscovered. Get ready for the journey through the most evil aspects of our world, where deadly secrets await to be revealed. Subscribe now and join us in uncovering the secrets hidden in the dark, and don't miss a moment of this terrifying journey through the shadows. Scary story. What if you entered a house that was more than a house? A house that had a dark and twisted history. A house that had a mind of its own. A house that had a secret that would change your life forever. This is not a story for the faint of heart. This is a story of horror, mystery, and revelation. This is a story of the Odell house and the people who dared to explore it. Mark had always been a skeptic. He didn't believe in ghosts, curses, or anything supernatural. He thought that the stories about the Odell house were just that, stories. Tales to scare children and thrill seekers, nothing more. He had moved to Fairview a few months ago, after his parents divorced. He hated the small town with its boring people and lack of entertainment. He missed his old friends, his old school, his old life. He felt like an outsider, a stranger in a strange land. He had made some acquaintances at his new school, but he wouldn't call them friends. They were mostly troublemakers, rebels, and outcasts. They liked to drink, smoke, and party. They also liked to explore abandoned places, looking for thrills and adrenaline. One of them was Lisa, a pretty blonde with a wild streak. She had taken a liking to Mark, and he had to admit that he liked her too. She was fun, adventurous, and flirtatious. She was also the one who suggested that they should check out the Odell house. The Odell house was the most notorious place in Fairview. It was an old Victorian mansion that stood on a hill overlooking the town. It had been built by Jonathan Odell, a wealthy businessman who had moved to Fairview in the late 1800s. He had a wife, Margaret, and 2 children, Edward and Alice. The Odells were a respected and influential family until one night they disappeared. No one knew what happened to them. Some said that they had left town in a hurry, fleeing from some unknown danger. Others said that they had been murdered by a rival, a lover, or a madman. And some said that they had been taken by something evil, something that lurked in the house. The house had been abandoned ever since. No one wanted to buy it, rent it, or even go near it. It was said that the house was cursed, and that anyone who entered it would suffer a terrible fate. Strange noises, lights, and smells were reported by those who passed by. Some claimed to see figures in the windows or hear voices in the night. And some never came back. The house had become a legend, a source of fear and fascination for the people of Fairview, especially for the young and restless who saw it as a challenge, a test of courage, or a way to prove themselves. Lisa was one of them. She had heard the stories, and she wanted to see for herself. She wanted to explore the house and find out what secrets it hid. She also wanted to impress Mark and show him that she was not afraid of anything. She had convinced him and 3 others to join her. There was Jake, a tall and muscular jock who was Lisa's ex-boyfriend. He was still hung up on her, and he wanted to win her back. There was Amy, a shy and nerdy girl who had a crush on Mark. She was smart, sweet, and loyal, but she lacked confidence and charisma. And there was Ryan, a sarcastic and cynical guy who was Mark's only real friend. He was witty, clever, and funny, but he also had a dark and cynical side. He didn't believe in anything, and he liked to mock everything. They had met at Lisa's house after school. They had grabbed some flashlights, snacks, and drinks, and headed to the Odell house. It was a crisp autumn evening, and the sun was setting behind the hills. The sky was a mix of orange and purple, and the air was cool and fresh. They drove to the house in Jake's old pickup truck. They parked at the bottom of the hill and walked up the winding road that led to the house. The house loomed over them, a dark and imposing silhouette against the fading light. It looked like a haunted castle with its pointed roofs, arched windows, and ornate decorations. It was surrounded by a high fence with a rusty gate that hung open. They entered the gate and walked up the overgrown path that led to the front door. The house was silent, except for the occasional creak or groan. The windows were boarded up and the door was locked. But Lisa had a crowbar, and she pried the door open with ease. She pushed the door, and it swung open with a loud creak. She smiled and turned to the others. "Welcome to the Odell house," she said. "Are you ready for some fun?" Mark felt a surge of excitement, mixed with a hint of fear. He looked at the house and wondered what awaited them inside. He shrugged and followed Lisa into the house. He didn't know that he was about to enter a nightmare from which there was no escape. Mark and the others stepped inside the house, flashlights in hand. The interior was dark and dusty, with a musty smell that made them cough. Furniture was covered with sheets, the wallpaper was peeling, and the floorboards were creaky. It looked like a museum, frozen in time. They walked through the foyer and entered the living room. There was a fireplace, a sofa, a coffee table, and a bookcase. There were also some paintings on the walls, portraits of the Odell family. Mark looked at them and felt a chill. They looked stern and cold, with piercing eyes and thin lips. They seemed to stare at him, as if judging him. He shook his head and followed Lisa to the kitchen. There was a fridge, a stove, an oven, and a sink. There were also some cabinets filled with dishes, utensils, and food. The food was old and rotten, covered with mold and maggots. Mark gagged and turned away. He saw Amy, who was looking at the fridge. She opened it and screamed. Inside, there was a severed head with a twisted expression of horror. It was Jonathan Odell, the owner of the house. Mark ran to her and slammed the fridge door shut. He hugged her and tried to calm her down. It's okay," he said. "It's just a prank. Someone put it there to scare us. It's not real. It's not real." He looked at Lisa, who was pale and shaking. She looked at him and shrugged. "I don't know. I swear," she said. "I didn't do it. I didn't know it was there." Mark didn't believe her. He thought that she was lying, that she had planned this all along. He felt a surge of anger and resentment. He wanted to leave, to get out of this house. He looked at Jake, who was standing by the door. He looked calm and smug, as if he was enjoying this. He smiled and winked at Mark. "Hey, don't be a chicken," he said. "This is fun, right? Come on, let's see what else we can find." He grabbed Lisa's hand and dragged her to the stairs. He looked at Mark and taunted him. "Are you coming, or are you too scared?" he said. Mark felt a pang of jealousy and pride. He didn't want to let Jake win, to take Lisa away from him. He wanted to show him that he was not afraid, that he was better than him. He looked at Ryan, who was leaning against the wall. He looked bored and annoyed, as if he didn't care about anything. He rolled his eyes and sighed. "Whatever, let's go," he said. He followed Jake and Lisa to the stairs. Mark hesitated, but then decided to join them. He left Amy behind, who was still sobbing on the floor. He didn't know that he had made a terrible mistake, one that would cost him everything. They climbed the stairs and reached the second floor. There were 4 doors leading to 4 bedrooms. Jake opened the first one and entered. It was Edward's room, the son of the Odells. There was a bed, a desk, a closet, and a toy box. There were also some posters on the walls of cars, planes, and superheroes. Jake looked around and smirked. He saw a baseball bat and picked it up. He swung it around and smashed it against the wall. He laughed and shouted, "Take that, you stupid wall," he said. He smashed the bat again and again until the wall was cracked and dented. He looked at Lisa and grinned. "Isn't this fun?" he said. Lisa nodded and smiled. She looked at Mark and winked. She wanted to make him jealous, to make him want her more. Mark felt a surge of rage and disgust. He hated Jake and he hated Lisa. He wanted to hurt them, to make them pay. He looked at Ryan, who was standing by the door. He looked disgusted and angry, as if he hated Jake too. He shook his head and muttered. "Idiot," he said. He opened the second door and entered. It was Alice's room, the daughter of the Odells. There was a bed, a dresser, a mirror, and a dollhouse. There were also some pictures on the walls of flowers, animals, and fairies. Ryan looked around and frowned. He saw a doll and picked it up. It was a porcelain doll with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a pink dress. It looked like Alice, but with a smile. Ryan looked at the doll and felt a chill. He felt like the doll was alive and watching him. He felt like it was mocking him, laughing at him. He threw the doll on the floor and stomped on it. He heard a crunch and a scream. He looked down and saw blood. The doll had broken, and inside there was a skull. It was Alice's skull, with a twisted expression of pain. Ryan screamed and backed away. He looked at Mark, who was standing by the door. He looked shocked and scared, as if he couldn't believe what he saw. Help me, Ryan said. He ran to Mark and grabbed his arm. He pulled him out of the room and slammed the door shut. He didn't know that he had sealed his fate, and Mark's too. They ran to the third door and opened it. It was Margaret's room, the wife of Jonathan Odell. There was a bed, a nightstand, a lamp, and a closet. There was also a window with a view of the town. They looked out of the window and gasped. They saw fire and smoke. The town was burning and people were screaming. They saw cars, houses, and shops on fire. They saw people running and falling. They saw flames and ashes. They felt a wave of heat and fear. They wondered what was happening and why. They wondered if they could escape and how. They looked at each other and panicked. They tried to open the window, but it was stuck. They tried to break it, but it was too strong. They tried to scream, but no one heard them. They were trapped and doomed. They turned to the fourth door and hoped. It was Jonathan's room, the owner of the house. There was a bed, a desk, a chair, and a safe. There was also a TV with a remote. They ran to the TV and turned it on. They hoped to see some news, some explanation, some help. They saw horror and despair. They saw images of murder, torture, and suicide. They saw faces of pain, fear, and guilt. They saw blood and death. They heard voices and curses. They heard accusations, threats, and confessions. They heard screams and silence. They felt a shock and a revelation. They realized what had happened and why. They realized who was behind it and how. They realized that they were the victims and the culprits. They realized that they were the Odells. The TV showed them the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It showed them their past, their present, and their future. It showed them their sins, their crimes, and their punishments. It showed them that they had killed themselves and each other. It showed them that they had been reincarnated and cursed. It showed them that they had been trapped and doomed. It showed them that they had been living in a loop, a cycle, a nightmare. It showed them that they had been in the Odell house forever. The TV spoke to them and mocked them. It spoke with the voice of Jonathan Odell, the owner of the house. It spoke with the voice of the devil, the master of the house. It spoke with the voice of Mark, the skeptic of the house. "Welcome to the Odell house," it said. "Are you ready for some fun?" The end.